You weren't mature, you were just a child who learned that crying didn't bring help, so you stopped crying. That needing didn't bring comfort, so you stopped needing. That showing weakness didn't bring protection, so you built armor so thick you forgot there was skin underneath. Now everyone looks at you and sees strength, resilience, independence, when really what they're looking at is a survival mechanism that's been running for so long, you don't even remember what it's like to not be in defense mode. They praised you for being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who had it together when everyone else was falling apart. And you wore that praise like a medal even though it felt like a chain. Even though deep down what you really wanted was for someone to see past the capable exterior and notice that you were drowning. You were tired, still just a kid trying to hold together a world that was never supposed to be your job to fix. But nobody saw that. They just saw how well you managed the chaos and called it maturity. You became the parent when you needed a parent, the caretaker when you needed care, the strong one when you needed someone else to be strong for you, and somewhere along the way you learned that your worth was tied to your usefulness. That love was something you earned by being low maintenance. That safety meant never letting anyone see how badly you were breaking. You can't be vulnerable without feeling weak, can't ask for help without feeling like a burden, can't rest without feeling guilty. Can't play without feeling childish, can't make mistakes without feeling like a failure, can't show emotion without fearing you'll be too much. You apologize for having needs because you learned that needs were inconvenient, that problems were yours to solve alone, that depending on anyone was a risk you couldn't afford to take. You're hyper-responsible, hyper-aware, hyper-independent. Not because you wanted to be, but because you had to be, because the alternative was chaos, danger, or watching everything fall apart. And somewhere in your child mind you decided that if you just tried hard enough, controlled enough, managed enough, maybe things would be okay, maybe you'd finally be safe. You take care of everyone, anticipate their needs before they ask, smooth over conflicts, manage emotions that aren't yours to manage, and you do it so automatically that you don't even realize you are doing it. You don't realize you are still playing the role you were forced into decades ago. It started the moment you realized the adults around you couldn't hold it together, couldn't protect you the way you needed to be protected, couldn't give you the stability that children require to feel safe enough to actually be children. Instead of being allowed to be small and scared, you had to become big and brave, had to navigate situations that should never have been yours to handle, had to read the room, manage the mood, predict the danger, keep everyone else okay, even when you were falling apart inside. You became a translator between chaos and calm, a mediator between adults who should have been mediating for you, a parent to your own parents, a caretaker to your siblings, a manager of a household that should have been managing you. And every time someone called you mature or responsible, they were unknowingly celebrating your trauma, applauding the wound, reinforcing the idea that this was who you were supposed to be. You learned that your feelings were less important than everyone else's stability, that your childhood was less valuable than everyone else's comfort, that your needs could wait but everyone else's required urgency. And you internalized that so deeply that even now, decades later, you still can't prioritize yourself without feeling selfish. Still can't take up space without feeling guilty. Still can't ask for what you need without believing you're too much. Here's the truth that hurts before it heals. You were robbed, not just of your childhood, but of the chance to learn that the world could be safe, that people could be reliable, that you could fall apart and someone would catch you, that you could be messy and scared and still be loved. The reason you struggle with intimacy, trust, and letting people in is because you never got to experience the foundational safety that teaches humans they were worthy of care just by existing. Not by performing, not by being useful, not by holding it together, just by being. You don't trust people because people proved they could not be trusted when you needed them most. You don't ask for help because asking for help as a child either got you nothing or gave you more responsibility. You don't show weakness because weakness was punished or ignored, and now you're an adult walking around with a nervous system still trapped in survival mode, still scanning for danger, still believing that perfect control equals safety. But you can begin unlearning this right now, not by suddenly trusting everyone or tearing down all your walls, but by realizing that the armor that once protected you is now suffocating you, that the strategies that saved you as a child are sabotaging you as an adult, that the hypervigilance that kept you safe in chaos is keeping you anxious in peace. You can start by noticing when you're parenting other adults, when you're taking responsibility for emotions that aren't yours, when you're solving problems that were never your job to solve, and instead of stepping in automatically, you can pause. Ask yourself, is this really my job, or just an old survival pattern playing itself out? You can start by doing something useless, something that serves no purpose except joy. Because you need to remember what it feels like to exist without justification, to take up time and space without earning it, to be a human being instead of a human doing. You can start by letting yourself be bad at things, by being a beginner again, clumsy and uncertain, and realizing that being imperfect doesn't lead to catastrophe. Mistakes don't make you unworthy, they make you real, and you are allowed to not know, to not have control, to fumble and still be safe. You can start by asking for something small, something that will not destroy you if the answer is no. And when someone says yes, when they show up and help without demanding repayment, let that moment become proof that maybe you can rely on others again. You can start by letting someone see you struggle, by admitting you're tired, overwhelmed, unsure, and resisting the instinct to follow it with, "But it's fine, I'll figure it out," because that phrase is your armor talking. That's the child who learned no one was coming to help. You can start by grieving what you lost, by letting yourself feel angry that you had to grow up too fast, sad that nobody protected you the way you deserved, furious that your pain was praised as strength, because you can to heal what you keep pretending did not hurt. You didn't turn out fine, you turned out functional. You turned out capable, but that isn't the same as healed. You turned out strong, but that just means you learned to carry what was never yours to carry. And now the work is learning to set it down. Strength isn't about holding everything together. It's about knowing when to let go, when to ask for support, when to admit that you're human and that humans were never meant to do this alone. The child you were needed someone to tell them it wasn't their job to fix everything, that being strong wasn't their responsibility, that being small and scared was okay. But nobody said that, so you just kept going, kept performing, kept holding it together until holding it together became your whole identity. You're not responsible for everyone's emotions. You're not required to sacrifice your peace for someone else's comfort. You're not obligated to repeat the same survival script just because it's familiar. The pattern ends the moment you choose yourself, the moment you start giving yourself the fierce protection you've given everyone else, the moment you realize you deserved better then, and you deserve better now. Better begins when you allow yourself to be small, unsure, and cared for. Even when every instinct screams it's not safe, even when the child in you panics at not being in control, even when it feels wrong to rest without earning it. You grew up too fast because you had to, not because you were strong or special, but because the people who should have protected you could not de-ice or would not tea, and you survived by becoming what the situation demanded. That survival is worth honoring, but it's not worth building your entire life around. It is not worth sacrificing your peace or defining your identity by the very armor that kept you alive. You were praised for being strong when what you needed was permission to be weak, celebrated for being mature when you needed space to be childish, admired for being independent when you needed to know that dependence was safe. Now the work is to give yourself what they never gave you, to become for yourself what nobody else was, to understand that the only way out of the pattern is through it, through the grief, through the anger, through the terrifying vulnerability of being seen without armor. And when you finally let yourself fall apart, you'll discover something miraculous. You don't actually break, you just breathe, you just feel, you just rest. Because surviving isn't the goal anymore, living is. And for the first time, that's finally allowed.